My name is Elise, and I live with my parents in a quiet town near the hills. On the outside, our life looks perfect. My father runs a business, my mother helps him, and people in our area respect our family. I grew up with everything I needed: good schools, travels, comfort. But one thing I never had was freedom. I had just returned home from university, earlier than expected. I told my parents I needed a break. They didn't ask questions. They were proud I studied in the capital and didn't want to talk about problems. The truth was, I had failed some exams. I felt lost and embarrassed. At home, days passed quietly. I stayed in my room or sat in the garden, pretending to read. Inside, I carried the heavy feeling of disappointment. Then something small happened that changed everything. One afternoon, I had a headache and stayed in bed. My mother mentioned that Luca, the new driver, had brought fresh vegetables. I didn't pay attention. But later that evening, I found a bowl of soup on the kitchen counter, with a note beside it, *for Miss Elise. You looked pale today. This might help. I held the note for a long time. I wasn't used to such small kindness. The next day I learned Luca often cooked while waiting in the car, leaving some food for the family. No one asked him to, it was simply who he was. That evening, when I walked past the driveway, I saw him sitting quietly with a book. He looked up, gave me a small nod, and I smiled back. Over the next days, I noticed him more. Sometimes he carried boxes into the kitchen, sometimes he cleaned the car. He was always polite, calm, and respectful. One afternoon, while I was in the garden, he stopped to fix a broken fence board. When he noticed me watching, he looked a little shy. I thanked him. He said softly, "Some things need care, even if no one notices them." I didn't know why those words stayed with me, but they did. Slowly, we began to talk. I learned he grew up in a town 2 hours away, and he was helping his younger sister through school. With him, I didn't feel like the girl who failed exams. I felt like myself again. Sometimes he left me notes with the soup. Hope today felt a little better. Try the pumpkin one, it's my mother's recipe. I started leaving little notes too, thanking him, recommending books, or just writing kind words. He once replied, most people don't see drivers. You do. That simple line touched me deeply. My cousin Ava visited one weekend. She was loud and full of life. When she noticed the way I glanced at Luca, she smiled knowingly. So that's why you've been so quiet lately? She teased. I denied it, but inside I knew she was right. I was waiting for the sound of his steps, the hum of the car, the little signs that he was near. One evening, I left a note asking him to meet me in the garden. At 6, I found him there holding the book I'd once given him. I told him, I think I've been hiding, from myself, from how I feel when I'm near you. He didn't rush me. He only listened, with that patient calmness that always made me feel safe. Finally, I whispered, "You make things feel easy." He smiled gently and said, "You make me feel noticed." It wasn't a confession, but it was something true, and from that night, everything changed. We grew closer, though quietly. Every glance, every small smile carried meaning. But my parents didn't know, until the day my mother found one of his notes left for me. She asked directly, "Do you like him?" I admitted I did. She told me it wasn't right, that my father must not know. But I couldn't keep silent. That evening, I told my father everything, about the notes, the garden, and how Luca treated me with respect. I expected anger. Instead, he asked, "Do you trust him? Do you believe he respects you?" When I said yes, he nodded slowly. "Then I want to meet him properly." The next day, Luca spoke with my father. I waited nervously upstairs. When he came out, he wasn't afraid, just thoughtful. Things began to shift after that. My parents didn't forbid me from seeing him, though they didn't encourage it either. Some people in town whispered. A few friends grew distant. But I didn't care. With Luca, I felt more sure of myself than I ever had. One rainy morning, I found a note tucked under a towel in the kitchen. I miss the quiet with you. The world is louder without it. I smiled, my heart light again. Later that day, I asked him, "Do you still want this, whatever this is?" He nodded. "I always have. I just want to protect you." I touched his hand and said, "Then stay. Let's try, even if it's not easy." Slowly, my parents adjusted. My father invited Luca for tea. He asked about his family and his work, and by the end he said, "You're a good man. My daughter is strong, she needs someone who sees that." It wasn't full approval, but it was enough. Months passed. The garden turned from green to gold. Luca and I spent more time together, talking, laughing, or just sitting quietly. One morning, I found a small box on the garden bench. Inside was a simple silver ring. No note, no big speech. Just the ring. When I looked up, he said softly, "I love you. I want to build a life with you, if you'll have me." With tears in my eyes, I whispered yes. We had a small ceremony in the garden, under the tree where we first spoke. My cousin Ava came, a few neighbors too. My father smiled more than I had ever seen him smile. My mother stayed quiet but sat beside him in a soft blue dress. It wasn't grand, but it was ours. Years later, we built a simple life together. Luca started a small business. I taught children in the village. We had 2 children of our own, one with his calm eyes, one with my curious smile. Sometimes, in the quiet evenings, I opened a small box where I kept old things. Photographs, dried flowers, and that very first note with the soup. Every time I read it, I smiled. Because love didn't arrive in fireworks or grand gestures. It came in a bowl of warm soup, a green apple on a bench, and the gentle patience of a man who saw me when I felt invisible. If you liked my story, please like, comment, and share. More simple and emotional stories are coming soon.